This is a version of this talk that I haven't given before, so I hope it's not too awkward. But I want to say a little bit more about kind of the whole story, because we're in a moment right now where we're scaling the Tirana School Streets program, and there's a lot that we're reflecting on, so there's a lot of thoughts that are kind of coming to us as we think about extending it. So I wanted to start with a map, because I know this is kind of your guys' thing at the technical Institute. But this is a great transition from the talk just before, which I noticed one of the takeaways was that the 15-minute city concept seems to work well with shopping and education. And that's very much our experience in Tirana as well, and very much back in 2018, what we were first really starting to notice in terms of equity for kids and caregivers being able to access quality public space. The school was the obvious choice, because they built school, and in many places are similar to this, schools were built in population centers. So as a new neighborhood would expand, housing would be built, a school would be placed in the middle of that. And so today, when you think about, what can you really work on, what can you really retrofit to build access in, the school is public land with a lot of space. That's what makes the obvious sense. And so we were starting to think, and so this quick mapping thing was, oh wow, well, there you go. They built it correctly. 80% of people live within a 10-minute walk, more or less, of a school. So that was really the beginning. And this was again a rendering that we made in 2018 to kind of illustrate what that might be, which is a schoolyard open as a public park after hours, connected to a safe, slow streetscape. And that is really what we've been pursuing ever since. I just also kind of threw this one. This was there are many key learning moments along the way that might reinforce what you already think you know, or kind of teach you something a little bit new too. Which was this mother, was really enjoying the pop-up while we were building it, and this is a pop-up school street that we built in about 4 days with paint on the ground and heavy concrete blocks. And she was there every day, and we were having this conversation with her about, so where do you usually go to hang out? So she was loving it. So we were like, welcome, this is great to have you. What do you like about this? And she said, well, it's right outside my front door. She said, I have a pretty good green space, 5-minute walk away. She has a baby, and she has a 3-year-old, and she can't go because it's too far. You've got the stroller, maybe. You've got all the stuff. You've got to feed. You've got to change diaper. You've got the other little kid, and she's at home, and she's cooking, and she's basically the homemaker. And 5 minutes walk is too far to be away. So that was really like, wow. So what does that mean then? If 5 minutes is too far, and we're trying to, we're working on schools that are kind of 10-minute. So this was just kind of another piece of the story that came into our thinking about the school streets. The other thing, and I'm not going to dwell on this too much, but again, I think it's an important part of the conversation, which is that what happens when kids don't have access to play outside their door? If we rely, first of all, so the equity thing, if we rely on kids being driven or taken to a park or a playground, it's still too far away, and they can't do it every day. Parents don't have the resources, the time to be able to do that. And so, but we know that, play is not, so first of all, play is brain building. Play is how we become who we are. It's how we become social. It's how we learn how to deal with other people. Play is essential. Play is not something that can be scheduled. Play is, when kids' perspective of play is that they exist in a kind of state of playfulness at all times. They need to be able to shift in and out of play whenever they feel like it. They need access to play at all times. When they don't get that, this is what we start to see. And I think another important part of this is to not blame the parent here. We see kids on screens, it's like, oh man, God, I wish you wouldn't do that. But it's like, the whole philosophy of this project is to say, it's the city's responsibility. It's not the parents' responsibility. The city, mayor, professionals, it's our job to eradicate this, and until we do a much better job of creating a public realm that's accessible to kids for that constant state of playfulness, we can't really pass judgment. So, okay, really quickly, just about what the school street is for those who don't know. The Tirana version is kind of unique in the sense that we don't ever fully close streets. We just slow them to an extreme degree as much as possible. So this is a very typical situation outside of a school. You've got a travel lane of about 3.4 meters, a parking lane of 2.5. And what we do is we just collapse all of that. We remove the parking and we collapse everything down into a big wide sidewalk. This is a before, this is an after. And again, so where we are right now is to think about, what is it about this shift that's really essential? There's a lot of things going on here. There's a lot of behaviors that this is enabling that are different from before. There's shade here. There's climate stuff going on. There's just human comfort stuff going on. There's vehicle reduction going on. But we're trying to think right now, and I'm just speaking. Again, we're like in the middle of a project of kind of where we're at, and I would love to be able to discuss with you guys a little bit more. So, 2020 until now, there are 9 permanent versions. Last year, the city of Tirana budgeted €1 million to build 20 more all at once with a private construction company. So there's 2 important things there. One is the crazy scale. We're used to doing 3 a year, kind of, but the other thing is we build them with the maintenance department of the city up until now, and now it's going to go to a construction company, and that's bad news. I mean, in many ways, it means scale, but it also means that we got to let go of a lot of control over the details, and so that's again why we're in this process of what does this really boil down to, that we can, how can we essentialize this and make sure that it can be built by anybody, anywhere? That's really the challenge, no? Like, there's only limited NGOs in Tirana, but we want this in every city in the world. So, all right, so quick timeline. Again, here's where we're at. 2020 to 2024, that's the pilots, building, testing a bunch of stuff, making permanent versions, but just like one at a time. Where we're at now, 24 to 26, capital construction. So we're building we're drawing, we're working with the engineers, selecting the sites, so putting together a package, and that's going to be tendered in June to go to construction. So the other thing during this is that we are working on a design guideline funded by GIZ, our German brothers, who would like to extend this across the country. And so what we kind of synthesize in a book potentially can be rolled out by them in different cities. And so that's kind of also feeding into the thinking of where are we at. All right, so today, quickly, what I'm going to talk about here is just some kind of lessons learned, like some of the important stuff. The street parties, we learned so much from them in the very early days. The maintenance team, the drop-off is like this kind of magic trick that I think really makes the school streets feel special and effective to the public in general. They're like, oh wow, like that is like a fix, like in ways that urban planning isn't necessarily always a quick fix. Sometimes things take a long time to kind of develop and then be understood as a benefit. In this way, the drop-off is kind of like, oh, that's a trick, kind of. So, and then lastly, one thing that I've been thinking about a lot lately is just the visibility and how that affects the safety. So the first thing, so this was like summer of 2021, I want to say. And this was like, we had been lobbying the city for a long time about, please let us build a permanent version of the school streets. We've been doing pop-ups for a long time. And I think just the point that I want to make about this, and this is something to be discussed longer term with a lot of people, but our version of engagement was not to go to neighborhoods and ask people if they thought that we should protect children. What it was we're going to protect children, and we're going to have a party that you can come and talk to us about how we're going to do that and why, and but not if. And I think that that's a really key point that I would just recommend this for everyone always. It's like when it comes to kids, it's really easy to make this case. And you could make it for all of us, like none of us should be exposed to the harms of vehicles. But in the case of kids, you really can say, this is not negotiable. You have the power. Mayors are a little bit more comfortable saying this kind of thing, but it's like, this is not an if. This is going to happen, and we just want to make sure that we give you enough lead time to understand what it's going. We're not trying to surprise anybody. During this process, we really learned that the rage of backlash was more related to the being caught by surprise and reacting quickly than it was to what we were actually proposing. So that was so I wish I had more time to talk about this, but anyway, I'm just going to keep moving. Okay, the other thing is this thing about the maintenance. So we built these with the maintenance department of the city of Tirana, and this is really kind of everything about why these streets got to turn out very well from the very beginning, is that we had a lot of interaction, we had a lot of design control on the fly with the maintenance department of the city. City of Tirana, maybe it's Albania, has a law that if a project's value is under 50,000 euros, it does not have to be tendered. And so that was the thing, well, these are really cheap, so we can just build them with the team. And this was really interesting. In 2016, the mayor of Tirana started posting this stuff with the maintenance department. But these guys weren't repairing the sidewalk, they were extending the sidewalk. So the city of Tirana kind of figured this out early days, which was like, the maintenance department can just go and fix the city, but like in a bigger sense of the word fix, like not just switch the, replace the brick, but really rather return it to a kind of pedestrian version of itself. So this was something. This was 2016. We said, oh, well, maybe we can do that with the school streets. And what's so great about it is that it takes a lot of time from us as the NGO, but we're there all the time. And so we can do clever stuff like this. We can remove the barrier previously that kept the kids from like hurting themselves, according to the transport department, and turn into a bike rack, stuff like that. So again, we could be also really inexpensive. These things could be really fast, really inexpensive, and we could demonstrate a big change to the city, a big benefit to people with, again, so this street was 13,500 euros. And again, that's kind of like the trick of the maintenance department, is that it's really, really cheap. And the only way, that just adds to the story. So of course, people are always like, oh, how much did it cost? And you're like, well, almost nothing. And so, and again, I'll get to this in a second, but the geometry, because the geometry is everything in this story, the cost is really, really low. And you can always just say, this is not an expensive thing, and it should not be. These should not be expensive, and everybody should do their best to kind of keep it to a minimum. Really quickly, one other thing is just, with the maintenance department, over the years, we got it down to 16 weeks. And that was really key too. Some of the projects early on kind of dragged on for various reasons. But so for 110 linear meters of school street, we could do it at this speed. And that was something else that you don't want to put people through a construction site for too long. Like, people are like, okay, you're doing it, it's happening, wrap it up. Let's get on with life, So the faster that you can build them also, it's a huge bonus. All right, so just quickly, so now I'm shifting a little bit here toward the drop-off trick. And this is nice in the sense that it makes an appreciable difference to the experience of kids and caregivers during the drop-off period, which is first of all, no building in any city requires 800 people to come through one door at one time. That's insane. So this is a very unique problem. And I think we need to address that, basically. And that's like, okay, so schools require a different kind of street. The fact that schools would have the same kind of street as all other buildings makes no sense when you consider the flux that's required to come through that door. So what we tried to address that, but so you should have multiple gates or no gate at all, and have people come from all sides. That's ideal. But in this case, what we do is essentially, we extend that sidewalk, make that a safe space, so that everybody can filter through those bollards and then come to the door. And so what happens, so here's the before. So what you do, you literally have everybody backed up from the door. So every single car stops right there. lets the kid out, then goes, then the next one does it. And that's extremely inefficient, and it causes people to do crazy stuff. Drivers go like, try to go around each other, and it just causes like an anxiety. So here's the transition, and you can see that big buffer of safe space. So now you start to see people open up their doors from behind. Now, I really wish that car would be down there, and with a little bit of coaching, I think we could easily get them there. But basically, so look, that's five people coming. Can you see it? That's 5 people coming out of the door all at once and filtering down. So in theory, this is also, the drop-off problem, all of those cars coming into one spot is like totally unsolvable unless you just let more out at once. And I think this is another thing that we can kind of go to the public with and say, this is a clear improvement over what it was before. When you think about the fact that you've sacrificed 12 parking spots and that's what people are making a big deal about, it's like, no, there's so many other benefits to this. Okay, really quickly, the other thing is just visibility. By removing a parking lane, I was in Seattle a couple weeks ago, and I was talking to some people from the Department of Transportation. They said they put parking on bordering parks because they think that it stops the balls from going into the street. Like, oh my God, like that is crazy. That is so crazy. Because the thing is that parked cars are the most dangerous thing for kids that there is, for this reason, that they sneak between and you get surprised. And so, this being the result of that is like, I don't, if you feel like making a case to drivers, which, sometimes we have to, that we're improving their experience as well, this is a very clear demonstration of that, which is that this is much more calming to you. Like, we are reducing the chaos of your experience also. And yeah, so anyway. All right, so then just last point there, number 5, in this phase is, what is the minimum version of this? And I come back now to the geometry thing, which is, it's just shifting that line. I mean, that's really what it is. And so any construction company can build that. And that's like, so I think that the materiality can be whatever. Lots of stuff can kind of go wrong or be crappy. But if this happens, then I do believe that the street is a much improved environment than it was before. So, the other thing that I didn't point out is like, so first of all, you widen the sidewalk. So you think about the pedestrians first. When you widen the sidewalk, you open up all these other possibilities. I showed the photo of the parents and the kids walking shoulder to shoulder. 1 caregiver, 2 kids on either side. That experience alone is special. That feels like a different day now that you got to do that. You can also do that while another kid is running over there. Like when you have 4 meters of space, so much can happen. And so, yeah, running, jumping, sitting, chatting, all of these things can happen. But the beauty of this is it's so efficient that when you do that, then it limits the other thing. And that's the thing that we want to limit. And so what happens with a narrower lane is that the driving is slower, but also it reduces people's ability to do crazy stuff, so less honking. Just an overall sense of calm and just a sense of quiet on that street. So that's the trick. Basically, it comes down to you narrow the lane, widen the sidewalk, you reduce the speed limit to 20 kilometers an hour. And then, we've also found that, of course, everybody knows this, you can't just post a sign of 20 kilometers an hour, you also got to do other stuff to slow. So we've been we do chicane whenever possible, and then we add speed bumps always now. And so we've been studying the speed. That's the one thing that we really collect the data about. We've been studying the speed, and now we've gotten it down to a thing where like no one really, the motorcycles go faster, but the 4-wheelers can't really go above 20 because of all the geometry stuff that we've done. And then the last thing, then it's a blank canvas. And now it's like, come make this yours. School community, please lead. Whoever wants to come in and do this. It's we as the NGO typically tried to lead the engagement with schools. It always depended. It needs to be the city's job as well, I think. Sometimes it can be a collaboration, but I think the co-creation, I think it should be open to all kinds of people. I think it's really an important part of it. I think it's the essential piece of the long-term health of the street, which is that now you've got this great geometry, but you also need it to be a vibrant place. And I think that's where that comes in. That, unfortunately, is not part of the budget of the construction of these streets. And so I think our role as the NGO would shift more into a kind of liaison role of saying, okay, so the city is building this infrastructure now. We as the NGO can go out and get separate grants to facilitate that kind of thing. So I'm almost done. So there you have it again. There's a before and after of one of the streets. You can see that this sidewalk was not bad, actually. It's just that, the drivers could kind of do whatever, and you did have that dangerous parking lane. And so you just brush all that aside. So kind of no matter what street you have, no matter what kind of street you have, you can do that simple thing of just get rid of the parking lane, reduce to one way, and maximize everything else. And sometimes you might get 6 meters, sometimes you might get 8, but it doesn't matter. Like you just need to reduce to a single narrow travel lane. And then just last thing, so like what's magical about this work, as many of you know who do it, is that you get these moments that just occur from the most basic infrastructure change. It's the cheapest, it's concrete and paint. It's just that concrete and paint is defining a different geometry. That's all it is. And so, now we get into a conversation about how can we improve, how can we shift the mode a little bit about how kids get to school. We want more kids to bike. Okay, well first you build a street like this, and now you need to do programming. We need bike bus, we need all kinds of cool stuff to come in and be fun, and it doesn't do it on its own. But you do see this was the second day that this street was open. It was so interesting. We watched this guy. He came and picked up his daughter on the back of his bike the first day, and the first day they did it on the bench in the back. The second day they innovated, and he changed bench, and it was easier this way for her to get on the other side. Super simple, like you would never think about it, but it's behavioral stuff that is enabled by basic infrastructure. And they have this nice relationship that they can do this thing, they can do this fun thing together now that's just made a little bit easier. Last thing, again, that street, so I say, of course I would rather close the street completely. That would be amazing. Unfortunately, the grid of Tirana just doesn't really allow it. The grid's crazy, not a grid, the street system is crazy. And there are most cases where you cannot do that. So we've said, the trade-off is you slow it down to the maximum, and if you do that, that's a pretty slow street. If those guys are willing and able to just sit and hang out like that, that traffic is more or less not really happening behind them, and it's certainly not fast. So that kind of thing. And then finally, again, this was not possible before. And this interaction is exactly what all of the early childhood development, all of the brain literature tells us. These kinds of interactions are essential for health. Our whole life, our health is dependent on things like this happening, and this was not possible before. So again, so cheap, so fast, and so simple, and can really change a lot of how we behave in the public realm. So I think I have 5 minutes left. Yeah? Nice. Okay.
So let's